Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is Tuesday, July 30th, 2019, and we have a very special GoldFish Report for you today, and it is about crop circles. And here to discuss, to co-host with me is, of course, my friend Steve from Austria. How are you, Steve?
Hi there from the heat wave over here.
You look hot. It looks hot over there.
It is.
And today, I'm going to introduce two people. One woman who I absolutely admire, whose tenacity and whose spunk and whose expertise in filmmaking gives me such an honor to have her join us again on GoldFish Report after a year hiatus on Crop Circle, the eight-time award-winning filmmaker and 5 EB Awards, a returning guest to the GoldFish Report, Patty Greer. Thanks for being with us, Patty. Welcome back to the GoldFish Report.
Thank you. What a pleasure. My very first show in a year. I appreciate the invitation and the honor of bringing Penny Kelly with me. This was a lucky day.
And of course, another guest, a new guest to the GoldFish Report, but is a collaborator with Patty on her Crop Circle Diaries movie. And in her own right, Penny is an author and researcher. She is a naturopathic physician and who specializes in consciousness research, and she is a collaborator of over 25 books. I want to introduce to all of our viewers Penny Kelly. Welcome to the GoldFish Report, Penny.
It's good to be here. I'm honored. Thank you.
This is such an exciting topic. And Patty, one of the things that we were talking about right before we started was that you noticed that there's a majority of crop circles that are concentrated in a certain area of Europe right now. Would you, Patty, I'll ask Patty first, would you like to explain why that is significant, or why should we point that out?
Well, in our history of crop circles, we've had, since the 1980s, the majority of them in southern England in an area called Wiltshire. And this area is somewhere between Stonehenge, the Avery Stone Circle, and Glastonbury. And the area just gets laden with crop circles. You can fly a half hour and see midsummer 15 or 20 within a half hour's flight. And that's a lot for one area. And it's because they always arrive over an aquifer of water, and they always arrive on a ley line. Now, when I say always, I'm saying 96% of the ones documented in the 80s, 90s, and through this century, we've seen most of them arriving on these two aspects of water and sacred sites. So the energy of both of those is, of course, frequency and high energy, high spiritual energy with the ley lines. So it's not an accident that they were in England so long, but all of a sudden, and you would only know this if you had gone in them, and I'm that person. Penny, of course, is the secret weapon of the science, because she was hidden all these years in the laboratory of William Levengood. And he was the great scientist who a lot of people have debunked because, well, frankly, they were probably paid to debunk him and suppress his work because it was so important. And all of a sudden, the last few years I was filming there, instead of the farmers welcoming us and opening the fields, all of a sudden we were seeing the farmers with signs up saying, "No humans can come on this land." And they were mowing out some of the crop circles. And when you go there and you stay on the overlooks of the hillsides overlooking the areas that are always hit with crop circles, the military presence grew more and more. And I think that the interaction we started having was very scary. I know for me, the last year I was there, somebody threatened to plant something on me at the airport so I wouldn't go home, and that was it. I was just like, okay, I get the point. I'm not coming back. And I went for a good 10 years where it was heaven. And I went in every crop circle that came down. By the end of the day, I was so tired. But if somebody said, "Oh, there's a new crop circle over on East Field," I would find the energy. I'd crawl if I had to be one of the first people in it, because then you can see the nodes, which are the actual physical evidence that it's a real crop circle. But if you've gone in enough of them, or even one real one, which I think most of them were that I went in, the hairs stand up on your arm. The goosebumps are on the top of your head and all the way down to your toes. For me, I was in enough crop circles that it was undeniable. We're not playing with UFOs and creepy unidentified things. We're actually dealing with a physical phenomenon that was proven in the lab of William Levengood and his secret partner, Penny Kelly, for the last 16 years of his life. Nobody heard about Penny until 2016 when we were introduced. And next thing I knew, my 3 days at William Levengood's wake turned into 3 weeks. I brought in a film crew and made my final film, Crop Circle Diaries. So why all of this in England has moved to France this year? Well, I think the military presence and the demands on the farmers had a lot to do with it, because all of a sudden, those of us that were filming and were very serious about bringing crop circle information to the public were no longer welcome. And when you've got real crappies that are no longer welcome, field after field after field, I stopped going. And the mother, the earth, who was sending up these messages in my scientific interpretation opinion, she was like, well, to heck with this. There's other sacred sites. There's other beautiful countries with ley lines and aquifers of water. And boom, she went to France. So this summer was truly fascinating, because up until yesterday, we had a new one yesterday in England and a new one the day before in England. But short of that, and I wrote down the numbers, 37 crop circles have been reported this summer that are officially documented, 12 rumors. But I want to talk about the numbers. In the beginning, kind of our practices were 3 in May, and they were all in the UK. But in June, we had 19 formations, and 11 of them were in France. Whoa, unprecedented. 11 in France, 4 in the UK. Now, I was starting to write on Facebook, oh my God, the circle makers have given up on England. And of course, you know, some of the filmmakers in England were saying, oh, no, but hello, 11 compared to 4, 2 in Russia, 1 in Switzerland, and my favorite messaging of all was in Poland. July, and then I'll let it go, there were 16, 14 in the UK, 2 in Switzerland, 2 in Russia, 16 in France. 16 compared to 14, so still more, and 1 in the Czech Republic. So where there's 1 and 2, Russia, Czech Republic, Switzerland, that's nice, but the predominance was definitely taken to France. And they were mostly in the north of France, near sacred sites. I don't think it was a coincidence. I think the mother has spoken.
Okay, that's a great point. And, you know, I'm going to ask Patty, I'm sorry, Penny, I have to get used to the two of you. Penny, this is a chapter that you shared with me, Consciousness and Energy, of a book that you co-wrote with William Levengood. In this book, you talked about how not all, there have been crop circles in other areas of the world, even in the United States, and lo and behold, in one section, I think around page 75 or so, you talked about how a particular place in New Jersey called Colts Neck, New Jersey, had a crop circle appear, and it was very different than the other kinds of crop circles. And of course, you were explaining why these were so different, why we don't see them as often in the United States. Would you like to explain that to our viewers?
Yeah, I think one of the things that came out of Colts Neck was the understanding that how a crop circle was formed was through a counter-rotating set of plasma vortices. And one of the things I mention in the book is that if you have too much electrical energy moving through your land, okay, so a lot of people don't think of the soil or the geography as having an electric charge moving through it, but it does. And if you have too much, that breaks up the really pretty patterns. And so you just get these plain counter-rotating vortices, more so than the gorgeous patterns and designs that we saw in England in the beginning years. When you have this counter-rotating force, it's typically going to have, depending, you have to know some things about plasma and about energy. Plasma almost always moves in relationship to other plasmas around it. And a plasma, by definition, we're not talking blood plasma here. Hang on one second. Let me turn that off. What we're talking about is a house or a region of fields, electromagnetic fields.
Here's the diagram, excuse me for interrupting, from your discussion on this in the book, if you want to explain that.
Right. Okay. So here you have the two, envision like little tornadoes, and they're rotating counter to one another. And when you have a vortex, it's picking up and it's got an electrical charge. These counter-rotating vortices had a whole stack of different kinds of characteristics: temperature, electromagnetics, heat, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, that was what the actual, you know, the crop circle looked like in Colts Neck. So it's this little tornado, and if you've ever seen a tornado moving across, say, Kansas,
right,
what you see is that it's picking up all this dust and dirt and, you know, building and trees and parts of Mother Nature, etc., and it's throwing them. Well, there are very strict mathematic laws that say you have, you know, you're going to have a distribution of magnetics or of particles that, you know, as you move out away from where the center of this vortex is, that distribution is going to get less and less in a very strict mathematical way. So there'll be this number of particles in close, and then there'll be this number or percentage of particles. It drops off according to the strength of the field, and the further you get from that vortex, the weaker the field gets. So what you have is this astounding conversation, is how I like to characterize it, happening between Mother Earth and the atmosphere, the bigger atmosphere, even the solar system and the entire galaxy. And she's in communication with other planets. If you know anything about plasma physics, which that was what Dr. Levengood and I were actually working on. We didn't know what we were working with for a long time. And he had kind of surmised that it was plasma, but not until he did a couple of really focused experiments and said, yep, this is a plasma. We're working.
Steve, go ahead. Would you like to?
Sorry, Penny, I mean, you're technically well versed in this, and you've done experiments. But so let me understand, as a layman, an opposing electromagnetic force will create a certain phenomenon, and that's, you're calling it plasma, or am I misunderstanding this?
No, the plasma. Okay, so let's go back to basic vision of a plasma. It's a line of electrical, it's a frequency, moving in a direction. Let's say it's moving horizontally, left and to right. And at right angles to the line or the path of that electrical frequency is going to be this electromagnetic field. And that field is very active, and it's going to be turning one way or the other. And so plasmas, frequencies, pair up, and they're drawn to one another just like two magnets, because you're dealing with electromagnetic energy. And when you get like a whole region, a sphere of frequencies, and here's the thing that Levengood and I did a fair number of experiments around, plasma responds to consciousness. That then it really makes a huge difference.
All right. Did you do any
Oh, we're having a little bit of an internet, Steve. Can you?
anti-gravity experiments with plasma?
So let me redefine gravity. The answer is yes. Gravity is a term for a concept that was developed back in the 1800s or so, that did not really have the full picture. And so today, if you look at plasma physics today, we don't talk about gravity. We talk about the magnetic forces. Magnetic forces are of two sorts. One is going to be, it pushes things away.
Repelling and attracting.
And attracting. Gravity is the attracting side of that.
Okay, so I don't want to jump all over the place here, but so plasma is also interdimensional?
Yes. Yes, it is.
So, I mean, I've had several UFO sightings myself, personally. There was I don't want to go off on a tangent, but you're talking about right angles. This is very interesting for me. And I've read about interdimensional travel that also requires right angles. The UFO was approaching, and I was in a group of people. We all saw it. We weren't drunk. We were perfectly conscious.
You sure,
we saw it. Well, I'm fairly sure. We saw it approaching over the mountains. It was absolutely silent. There was no engine. It was nothing to do with fossil fuels. Nothing. Nope. Approaching very. It was as bright as the sun. This is it's the early evening, and then it started moving side to side. It was bright white, changed color, went to red, and went on a right angle to its path of trajectory, and then vanished. So right. I'm assuming it went to another dimension or beyond our vision. And the right angle was something to do with it, and also it was an anti-gravity vehicle. Obviously, it was right. To us appearing to float.
Okay.
So
yeah.
So what are your comments on that?
So when you have let's say how do I explain this? Real simple. So when you have a plasma, it has a signature, a frequency signature. So if you have a craft, you can tune your craft's plasmas to the signature of whatever you want to go to. And what happens is they are, boom, immediately it goes. So the science is basically saying you can tune your craft to Mars, because Mars has a signature, be there by lunch, and be home by supper.
So you dial in the frequency of Mars, and off you go.
It's like a radio, but it's like a radio. We're dialing in a radio. Let me just continue here for a second, because I need to, we're talking about it. It's another thing to see it. And Patty, brilliant Patty, discovered something amazing. This is, I think, one of the greatest. I'm telling you, it's an amazing discovery. I give Patty so much credit for this. Patty, you know where I'm going to go with this, and you can definitely talk about this. I'm going to try to full screen this. I hope it's not distorted, but why don't you tell us what's going on here, Patty?
Well, what we're seeing is the Oliver's Castle footage of two spinning plasma fields that the eye will see as a ball of light. At the base of a vortex of plasma, what the human eye will see is a ball of light. And these two plasma fields, these vortices, are moving across a field of wheat, and bam, within seconds, the field goes down and creates a crop circle.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to catch this, that you brilliantly.
Well, what happened?
Hold on. Can't catch it. Yes, I'm sure you have slowed it down. I'm going to play it back again.
I did. So the first movie that I made, I absolutely knew nothing other than I had been in way too many crop circles, and I wasn't speaking human talk anymore. Instead, I was seeing intuitively what was going on in the fields, and here's one in France. And what's happening is that these double fields, these spinning plasma vortice pairs, are creating crop circles in a matter of seconds. And well-paid people will deny that any of them are true, but this is my very favorite center I've ever seen in a crop circle. This happened in a matter of seconds, but it was one of 65 center formations, and all of them were different. There's another one in the same formation. Imagine 65 of them. Yeah, I'm imagining on my back. And I used to take myself to the center and lay down, but Penny and William Levengood said more of the energy is on the external, the outside of the circle. So that was interesting to me. It was something I didn't know. But when I was watching the crop circle being formed at Oliver's Castle, I said to my editor, wait, stop, rewind the footage. And he said, why? And I said, I don't know, just show it to me backward. And I was brand new, I was green as a tree. And he slowed it down and he reversed it. And then I said, slow it down. And he just looked at me like, how slow? And I said, I don't know, 30%. And it just came out like from the back of my head, out my mouth. And he slowed it down 30%, and bam, there was this binary code between two balls of light in the Oliver's Castle footage.
And this is what we're looking at right here on the screen right now.
Here. And it was just that moment in time that I was fortunate enough to intuitively find. And of course, all the well-paid people denied it. The day I was at Penny's house, I had a screenshot, like a glossy 9x12 of the two balls of light with the binary code between them. Now, I was the only one that thought this, but I showed the picture to her and I said, what is this? And she goes, wow, where'd you get that? That's two plasma balls communicating in a binary code. And I almost started crying because it was like, oh, thank God there's somebody on earth that saw what I saw. She said, where did you get that? And I said, Oliver's Castle, right before they laid the field down. She had no idea. So this is really a moment.
Well, let me ask Penny, since she's with us. Penny, this is an amazing discovery. This is huge.
Yeah.
Can you please comment on what we're looking at from your perspective? From what
a couple of things I would say. When you have two plasmas, they talk to one another, they move in relation to one another, and they have this, you've all seen those shopping codes, what do they call those? Where it's
barcodes.
Barcodes.
Oh, right.
That's exactly what that is. It's the barcode of information that lays out or has the pattern embedded within it that is going to become the crop circle. And if you look at this, what's on screen, even though it's kind of, you know, it's not really high definition, you can see that the field extends out to the right side of the screen, almost as, you know,
actually, you mean right here? Can you see where my pointer is pointing?
So it's overshooting.
Yeah, it is. Right.
Well, that's the field that wraps around the central core of the vortex. And at the very bottom of the vortex, any vortex, and this is why Rudolf Steiner's work actually works. It's because you stir and you create this vortex in the water. And what builds up at the bottom of that vortex is an electrical charge that can approach 10,000 volts. And when you break up that, you know, that
vortex,
stir, the charge dissipates through the water and imprints whatever material you have in that water is imprinted into the water. And so you're stirring compost tea, for instance, into the water, and the water picks up all of the characteristics, chemical and energetic, which is electrical, of that compost. And all you have to do is then go around and spray a little bit of water, and it has an amazing, amazing effect because plasma is powerful.
Patty, what made you stop? This is a great discovery. This is so huge. What made you? She's like, I know.
Yeah, I'm over it.
Patty, what made you stop and tell him to rewind it? I mean, replay it at 30%. What
funniest thing was, I thought I had finished the movie, and I ended my very first movie, which was called The Wake Up Call. Anybody listening? ? Which is kind of my question today. And the movie was done, and I was with this 26-year-old editor that I hired on Craigslist. And so I said, oh my God, I'm exhausted. We've done, 15 hours in a row. Let's go out on my deck, take a break, and come back in. So we were headed out on the deck. He was first, and I looked over my shoulder and I said, I thought you turned the gear off. What's that big blue ball on the monitor? And he looked at it and he said, whoa. And we both walked up, and it was this orb with all these elements of sacred geometry and mathematics. And we're both looking at it, and I said, that's not even in the movie. And he looked at the wall and he said, the monitor's unplugged. And now I'm starting to get goosebumps, chills. And all of a sudden, whoever was playing with my field in the crop circles was right there in my house in Boulder, Colorado. And they threw a big blue ball of light that wasn't in the movie onto my monitor while it was unplugged. And Penny explained that a blue ball of light is a communication from another world. And boy, did they get my attention. So this poor guy, 15 hours, I said, sit back down, turn the gear on. I thought we were taking a break. No, sit down. And all of a sudden I'm like flushed, goosebumps. I have teeny little hairs on my arms because I'm a girl, but they were standing up, every single one. I don't think any of them were laying down. I was like, woo! And so we sat down and I said, reverse the Oliver's Castle footage. And that's how it happened. It was like the presence came into my house. I didn't have a choice. I was completely taken over by this higher energy that was basically guiding me with all 8 movies. I will say that I didn't do any research for any of these movies.
It's such a brilliant discovery. I'm just, Steve, let me ask you.
Well, I'm assuming that it's what it is. I mean, it could be a video artifact, but it looks like binary code to me. And that's the same technology we're using in, it's the same technology we're using in glass fiber cable, isn't it? It's the binary code with light. It's sent with light over the fiber cable, yeah?
Penny, do you want to comment on that, Penny?
Yeah, it's you're going to have what you want to call an artifact. That's typically an artifact is something that is actual, and we don't know enough to explain it. But when you have a barcode, we have enough to explain it. That's a communication tool with all of the pattern that's going to be laid out and coded in it.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a barcode, your address and your charge card number and all that is encoded in it.
Sure. Well, I think the next step would be to analyze the code itself, and you could work out the speed of it through the footage, working out the speed of the footage, and then dividing it by 30. What do you take to 30%? Whatever. I guess we could look at that. It'd be very interesting to see. I mean, my other question is: you both mentioned you firmly believe that it's the Earth communicating. What makes you say that, and not from somewhere else?
I want to talk about the layers in the counter-rotating vortices.
Okay, let Patty go first.
Yeah, either of you.
And then we'll go over to Penny. Okay. There's just so much to talk about.
I know there's a lot of ground.
Very good. Go ahead.
We're starting at the graduate course. I mean, this is like the peak of crop circle wisdom. But I've taken a year off. I want to hit it, and So we're going to be doing ping pong of really, in my opinion, the most advanced data that's ever been talked about with crop circles. I'm not going to waste any time with the boards and ropes or the guys shooting stuff down from outer space.
No, that's more a confirmation. The boards and ropes, they wanted to debunk it. That means that there's something to it. Basically, they're confirming it.
I'm not going to waste time on that because we've got so much evidence, and how Penny and I were brought together was really amazing. But I want to talk about the different layers of those plasma vortices, and I want Penny to name them because she mentioned human consciousness can be one of those layers that shows up in crop circles, such as when a group of people are meditating and the next day there's a crop circle of the picture they were staring at. I know 4 incidents where that happened. One of them was me. And when I woke up the day after I had remembered where I was taken, when I was first passed out in a crop circle, I thought I passed out. But when I woke up, I started making movies. So I didn't know for a very long time until I pretty much bumped into Penny, but I was taken to a place that turned out to be a crystal castle. And when I remembered it was somebody had shown me photos of Ariel Ali painting a crystal castle. And I started shaking and crying and everything. And my friend's like, what's going on? And I said, oh my God, I'm getting goosebumps right now just remembering that moment. That's where they took me. I'm sure of it. It was underwater. There were pyramids. The colors were unbelievable. And there's the Crystal Castle crop circle on the bottom left that showed up the next morning. So by the time my friend got up from the guest room, I'm in the kitchen. I get an email from the crop circle connector that I belong to, and they send you images of the new crop circles that show up. And at first, it was only the Crystal Castle without the circle on top. And I'm looking at this thing, and there is not one circle. It's all rectangles, teardrops of water, and I'm completely losing it because the night before, it was 10:30 when my friend showed me these paintings by Ariel, and it was definitely the memory. But 10:30 in Colorado was 3:30 in the morning in England. And in England, you only have 3 hours of darkness in midsummer. So the fact that that crop circle came down while I remembered, when I woke up the next day, I was a mess again. I was like, oh my God, you know, the mother is listening and she wants to bring me back. And I was just a mess. But I was noticing that there was no circle anywhere. 2 days later, look what showed up. Even bigger than the formation is a huge circle. And who's inside it? Oh, excuse me, it's a goddess. So, Penny, would you talk about those distinct layers of different frequencies happening in the spinning vortices that create crop circles?
Yeah, I have, I made a little list because I thought somebody might ask about that. So in a plasma vortex, you have microwaves. And those microwaves act just like the microwaves in your microwave oven. They are the heat source or the factor that bends the cellulose in the stem. All plants are made of cellulose, which is a form of plastic. And so when you have these microwaves and they are intense, if there's a lot of microwaves, you're going to get plants that just lay down immediately. So the second is there's the presence of electric fields. So there's your positive and negative electromagnetics. And when you have a collection of fields, then what you have, because plasma is responding to consciousness, and in fact is consciousness. Consciousness is the feeling aspect of energy, and energy is the motion of consciousness. So plasma is a very primitive form of energy. It's one of the most, and those fields are communicating with one another. And depending on the variety of angles that are being maintained in the electromagnetic field around the frequency, at right angles to the frequency, that's what creates the pattern. So lots of electric fields in all different directions. The third factor is convective. There's a convective motion, and so it either picks up, if it's how do I say this?
You can say it technically if you have to.
Okay, so when you have a left-hand rotation in a vortex, it is magnetic and it draws things to it. When you have a right-hand rotation, it is dispersive. It pushes it, you know, it throws things away. It doesn't draw them in. And so what you get in a crop circle is this amazing complexity of these convections going in all different directions, and that is what pulls some of the stalks to be straight up and then kind of bend at the top a little bit, and the others to kind of swirl around it, or you know, or whatever the pattern is.
You can see that here if you want to point out which image might be.
That bottom left on the right, that's a perfect example, beautiful example of the complexity of the convective fields within the plasma. Each field is going to pull or push or move the you know, the actual material, the wheat or the corn or whatever it is. You need a lot more energy to move corn than you do wheat or oats. So, and then the earth herself has a lot of electric fields. And those are going to be interacting with the plasma itself. And then you have heat fields, infrared, and depending on how hot, you get different kinds of effects. Sometimes the seeds are absolutely fried. They don't do anything. But in most crop circles, what you get is this amazing enhancement of the seeds, and they grow
Stronger and higher and better.
yeah, they do. And one of the things that we say about that is that the plant has been gifted with enough energy to be able to restore all of its genetic capabilities.
So,
Okay.
so if you stuck seeds in a microwave oven, that's not necessarily constructive, is it? So we're talking about different types of energy. This is a positive, constructive, conscious energy, I guess, rather than simply a mechanical, destructive energy that will destroy DNA rather than enhance it.
You got it.
Yeah.
Okay. There's an article here. Now, don't hate me, guys, but I think we need to realize that there's people out there who are trying to debunk this, and I'm only bringing it up because an article like this is trying to say that it destroys the crop, and the farmers are angry about it, and they don't like it, and they don't want people coming around because it's destroying the crop. Now, the people who are out there faking. How can you can't fake something like this?
Something like that,
ridiculous.
Not in one evening.
Not at all. Not right.
In a few minutes.
But Patty, from our first interview we did, one of the revelations that you shared with us was it's quite the opposite of what they're claiming here, isn't it, Patty?
Yes. And needless to say, the BBC will only interview people with boards and ropes. They're not going to
boards and ropes.
And if you break the wheat and lay it down, it's easy. When you're a croppie and you go in the formation, you can see that where it's bent, they're broken. They're all broken, and they're not going to continue living. When you see that the stalk has an elbow, which is called a node, and the node has blown to a bubble, sometimes they even have a steam black burn hole. What you know then is that something natural happened where the liquid inside the stalk was heated to the point where it blew the node over. And keep it here because I want to talk about something absolutely amazing. Those bottom 3 photos are the same formation. When it's green, you're talking May or June. By July, August, it's brown. So when you see different colors, it's just different seasons, different maturity. But those bottom 3 and the center top one that looks kind of like a nose were an answer to something that I found amazing. A very simple, I called it the orbit at Avebury Manor crop circle, came down, and it was talking about, I think, the planetary alignments, but Pluto was missing, and people were freaking out that it was this huge message. And the very next day, the farmer had plowed 2 big white lines through the formation to destroy the information. And what did the mother do, the circle maker? She came back and splattered the field with all these, it looked to me from the air, because I flew in the little microlights that day and the next day, it looked like a bunch of scribble. But when I got on the ground, this is what I saw. Each one was so stellar. How about the star on the bottom right? That is not easy to do in dry, brittle wheat. And when it's tan or brown like that, that's some really seriously dry wheat. And if you hit that with a board, it's going to break. But the fact that those were not broken nodes was absolutely stunning. And when I went in the field after the farmer got his word back from the mother, yeah, you want to mess with me? Whack! She hit him with all these different formations. When I went in the field, like I said, it was out of this world, and each element was absolutely stunning on the ground. And I went in that night. I brought my friend Monique Liekenberg, who's got the exhibition center in Wiltshire that's open now. Anybody over there? You want to go to the exhibition center and learn about crop circles, because that's where you're going to find things, hopefully my movies. But Monique and I went in that night, and it was almost dark. And I said, oh, look, there's a shortcut. Now, she was smart enough to say, oh, no way, I'm not going in a shortcut. So I said, see you in the middle. So, of course, I go wandering in like an American who doesn't have a farm in her backyard ever in my life. And by the time I got to the center, I think I was in the center of the bottom left little element. I realized that my black skirt felt really heavy. And I looked down and it was covered in these big white dots. And I thought, what did I walk through? Cotton balls? And then my white little crappie shirt that was sleeveless and mock neck, which meant I had to pull it over my head, was also covered with these big white dots. And all of a sudden I realized one of them was crawling toward my face. And I was covered in basically white tarantulas. I had walked through some kind of major web, which my friend was smart enough to go in the main entry of the crop circle. And there I was, twilight, all by myself in the middle of that big formation, covered in, there must have been 50 spiders on me. And I don't know how, other than when you're in the crop circles, you are one with the mother. I just took my skirt off and they scurried away. The worst thing was taking that shirt, like a mock neck, like what I'm wearing now, had to go over my head, covered in spiders. And I did it, and there I am, standing there in a pair of thong sandals, underwear and a bra, in the middle of this crop circle in twilight. Monique's like, "Hey, Patty, where are you?" And I'm standing there in shock, watching these white tarantulas, or whatever they were, crawling away from my clothing. And that was probably the dumbest thing I've ever done, but one of those amazing moments where I went, wow, even that didn't scare me. So my devotion was pretty intense until somebody threatened to plant something on me at the airport. So I would, and it was just like, enough military interference. I don't need this in my life. I've got enough footage. Went back and started and continued making movies.
Yeah, means you're over at the target, basically.
Exactly. Let's talk. I'm sorry. Did you
I want to
Penny,
just make a comment.
Sure.
Levengood actually investigated almost all of the crop circles over a 10 or 15 year period. And 96% of them were real. He could tell instantly.
Yeah.
And so, so could I. When you looked at the material and you looked at the data that came from the chart recorder where we had tested some of the soils and things like that, the energy that is, here's the thing. When you have a high energy formation, vortex, touch anything in your vicinity, what happens is it leaves an energetic fingerprint. And what Levengood figured out how to discover was, had there been an energetic fingerprint in most of the crop circles were real. They only made a few crop circles with ropes and boards so they could say most of these are crops and boards and have an argument against, because they did not want people understanding plasma and frequency.
What were the measurements? Were they magnetic? Were they electrical? What were the measurements? Heat?
No, it was the amount of plasma you have. So
what do you use to measure plasma?
The charge density inside the plasma. Now that means nothing to most people.
What do you use? A machine? What do you use?
You use, okay, so when you want to see how much energy something has, okay, you put it in water, perhaps, and then you test the water. You put electrodes next to it or up against it, or you on it. And what happens is that item, whether it's a stone or, water or some other material, will send a signal to a chart recorder. And that
it's an electrical field. It creates electrical current in the conductive. Okay.
That you can read, and
like
it's
a sine wave.
phenomenal. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, this is so fascinating. Okay, all right. This is so exciting.
Oh no, there are quite more questions I've got too.
I know, Steve, this is great. Yeah. But let's focus on something here for a second. Let's take a look at another video of a plasma ball, it looks like. This is in a video. I don't know if this is going to lay a crop circle down or interact with it, but this is somebody who filmed the, here it goes. No, is this the real one?
Phony.
This is the fake one. I'm sorry. You're right. This is the fake one. Sorry. It's not the one I wanted to watch. Okay, here's another one. But there you go. That goes to show you that somebody will take the time to go and Photoshop it and make something up to be fake. Because you're right, you're over the
You're
target.
over the target.
Right. I had to pull up some of the, I didn't have them labeled, but I did have to pull up some of the other research I found on this so that we could comment on what was going on. And here's another one.
Surprises, Louisa.
These are orbs. Well, orbs, it's not, limited to the crop circle phenomena. There's orbs that are here for maybe other reasons, and I don't know what they are just yet, but I wanted to show that there are other examples of orbs in other places. So this is another one. Let's just take a look at this other one. I'm not quite sure. Did this screen share properly, guys? Let me just take this off because Zoom is funny about this. Let's take a look at these orbs here as well. Who are, I'm not quite sure. This is in England in 2019. They were hovering near some crop circles is the description of this. I can't independently verify these, but this is, these look pretty authentic to me as they appear, reappear. And then I'm going to show one other example of orbs. These were initially reported. This is what Project Blue Book was all about. These orbs were appearing. Then of course here's the crop circle that was underneath it that they're showing in the in the video. And there's some more. Those are the there's some orbs there.
Was it a military flash?
Pardon?
I think that was a military flash. They send up these flares over the hillsides.
Yeah.
That
well,
one.
I don't know. They're still pretty. They're not dissipating. They're kind of hovering. I think those are orbs. I don't know. They may or may not be, but okay. And I also wanted to screen share. Let's not forget. Why would I be sharing a picture like this? This was. Can you guys see this?
Well, there were orbs there too, weren't there?
There were, and I'm going to show them to you. And this was a picture that the president actually tweeted, and it was a very overcast sky, so it was very hard to see this. But I'm going to screen share. We're going to zoom in. And I'm going to screen share what was actually up in the sky. If you zoom into that image, I'm going to show you the picture. Here we go.
Weren't there orbs photographed in the 50s during Eisenhower's presidency?
Yeah, I'm going to get to that in a second.
All
so
right.
This was the picture. You can see this is the president's. This is Donald J. Trump. This is his Twitter, and right up here, you can't see it here. Let me see if I can click on this photo a little bit more. Now, so they're right here. If you look closely, they're right there. And then I'm going to pull them up so that you can see them. Where did they go? Okay, so here's one of them, and here's the other one. Can you guys see these?
No, it's too small. I think people can find them easily on the internet.
No, they're not easy on the internet. You have to zoom into the picture and take the.
No, I mean the images. You can find it and enlarge them.
My motto is.
I'm going to show it. Okay, so this is one of them. Can you see the orbs that were? If you zoomed in, you can see that they were up in the sky. This is one of them, and I can only share one window at a time for some reason, but because I would love to share the other one.
And probably all in even numbers.
Well, let's just take a look at this because this is pretty significant. This is the other one, and it was in the photo, and I zoomed in on that photo we just looked at, and I did find them, and they were in that picture that the president tweeted. So it's not. We do have these orbs, and let me also say that this is what Project Blue Book started out. There were orbs that appeared over the mall in Washington, D.C., and it scared and frightened a lot of people because this was right after World War II. This is in the late 40s and the early 50s when Project Paperclip brought the Nazi scientists over to the United States, which is who we're battling now today in the government, but that's another story. I promise not to get political. And this is what Werner von Braun was doing. They understood this plasma, technology way back then, because Steve, as you noticed, lots of times when you see, images of these beams, these orbs, they are going at a 90-degree angle. A lot of sightings of original, what they would call UFOs or orbs or whatever, were seen doing things that regular aircraft cannot do. So you were
Impossible,
right.
yeah. G forces, yeah.
And it's so it's all tying in this whole plasma technology, and I'm sure that has something to do, with the Philadelphia experiment. With it's all about frequency. Do you want to comment on that? Because you know that they were working on this. What you're explaining right now is this propulsion technology, and I know that Patty has mentioned this in previous GoldFish Report when we screen shared some of the other video from her collection of videos. How some of this is propulsion. We haven't talked yet about what these symbols mean. We've been focusing on, for this first hour, we've been focusing on what are they? How are they made? How are they made? And what's the mechanism to make these?
Well,
now we're
may
going
I?
to try to focus a little bit
May
more.
I add, just before we get into that,
Sure.
is that we've been followed by these crop circles at least since medieval times. They've turned up in woodcuts from Central Europe. I've seen them with my own eyes. So they've been there. But may I also add that the crop circles since that time, certainly in the 20th century, the late 20th century, have grown in complexity along parallel with the consciousness of humanity. So I'm assuming that there's a link between the consciousness of humanity,
Right,
and the message therein. So, for instance, if I jump to the Chilbolton 2002 binary message on the disc, what that disc said, I mean, maybe, what is the general message? Why did they appear over the mall? What is the message?
Let's do that message, because that was phenomenal. And I still got it right there. It was at the turn of the century, and may I point out that we had just experienced 9/11. Okay, so it was the summer after 9/11, and it was this big alien face with a binary code disc, and the disc was deciphered by mathematicians and scientists, and they agreed that the message was this: after 9/11, beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. Believe there is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing.
0 times 07 apostrophe. Well, what does that mean? there was an ending to it. Do you know what that means? The ending
Well,
to
it was a bell. Rather than, I don't know the math that you're referring to, but they thought it was a bell. And again, it's binary code, so I can't.
Right, they couldn't read it. Okay.
Know. But the message to me is very clear that the mother was saying, beware, you're being lied to.
Yep.
Right at the turn of the century. It was immediate.
False flag.
And the very next summer, we had another binary code message in Chilbolton, 8 miles away. And no coincidence, both of them weren't just in a farm field. They were both in a farm field with a huge telecommunication tower on the side of the field.
Wasn't that the SETI? The SETI, they were looking for into artificial intelligence outside, or intelligence outside of our universe. Yeah. That was right next to it. They put this message: "Here you are, guys." That was very funny. The irony. That's right.
right.
They wanted the people to share the information.
Yeah.
And what did the news do? Oh, look over there.
That's
mean, the message went away. But we, the people, are starting to remember.
So, but what is the message? What is it for us to wake ourselves up? Is it from us?
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of messages. Patty, did you want to? Why don't we screen share? Did you want to talk about that now? The
messages this summer.
Okay, let me figure out how to do this slideshow.
Well, my other question is, if they found a way, I mean, they communicate with binary.
Steve?
Before is correct. Okay. Am I frozen? No.
Occasionally it does on my end.
Yeah, it's a bad connection.
Okay.
Look, all right. If they connect with binary, why don't they continue to converse with binary? They use geometry, they use symbolism.
Yeah.
Astronomy sometimes.
Why can't they just use English?
Because the common language of the universe is electrical signals that are either on or off.
So it is binary.
Yeah, it's all binary.
Okay.
So a lot of the messages have been gifted to us in pictograms for those of us with, shall we say, simple minds. And a pictogram is a picture of an octopus, an alien face, a disk, a sun, alignments of planets. This here at the top is the two formations at the turn of the century. On the top right is the alien face in the disk, beware the bearers of false gifts. On the left is the amazing message that we sent out, Carl Sagan and Francis Drake, sent out, what was it, the 60s or 70s, out to M13, a star cluster very far away with very specific information about Earth.
In binary code. Yep.
Yeah. There were 9 different elements of information, including our DNA, the shape of our body, the planetary structure. There was so much information that we sent out, and boom, it came back with changes. They had a bigger head, a smaller body, a different DNA, a different layout of the planets. My feeling is you can either open your eyes or close them. We're human. We have choice. I was going to say conscious choice, but some choose to be unconscious and just close their eyes. Therein lies crop circle understanding or not. Are your eyes open? Is your heart open? Is your mind open? Or are you over it and you just want to go boards and ropes, let's go shopping? So we've got choices here on Earth, and people are still over shopping. I'm over shopping. I'm focused on the Earth and her messages. And you can see behind me, I still live in the woods, in the trees with the wildlife. And it's a choice that I make. And when I go into town, I can hear the electricity, and I just want to hurry up and get my chores done, get to the post office, get food, get water, and get the heck out of Dodge, because I want to work with the mother, much like Penny. And I don't resonate with a lot of people anymore because I'm kind of scary with my intuition, and I'm not very well educated with politics or world affairs because I don't work that way. So my great friends in media, Sarah Westall, You Are Free TV, they are so political. And of course you, Louisa, so much information about what's going on in the world. I would have to like totally sit on the back burner and listen and be lost with half of it. But you want to talk crop circles and intuition and the earth, you know, messaging subliminally.
Let me ask Penny, would you like to comment on what we're looking at, Penny? Because you seem to acknowledge this when we kind of pulled up on it. And
Make it a bit bigger, Louisa.
There's really not a whole lot I can say. When you send out a message and you get a message back, you know, you can either ignore or you can take it into account. I think that we have, there's some stories I could tell from my own background, you know, that I really have never shared. But I'm just going to say that when Dr. Levengood and I were in the lab working, crop circles and their materials were not the only things that we were working with and working on. We had samples of materials from animal mutilations. We had samples of materials and their physical effects.
Link to the crop circles.
Pardon?
The link to the crop circles.
No.
Separately,
Animal mutilations are a whole different thing.
Of course.
And then there's UFO landing sites. And then there are people who have had experiences. You know, we had a chance and we got a message. So I'll just kind of briefly summarize that. Down in South America, a fellow that had been being picked up or in communication with beings from other dimensions, other places, was told, we're going to come and get you, and we're going to come and get you somewhere in this 2-week period, and we're going to keep you for 2 weeks, and we want you to tell your family that you're fine. No, you haven't, you know, keep the police out of it, etc.
How did you get the message?
So he got the message originally because he was in communication with beings from elsewhere. Okay. So he gets picked up, and when he gets picked up, he said he was laying on the bed and he was reading a book, and he had just taken a shower because his family owned a ranch, and he had come in for I guess the evening. He took the shower, he's reading this book, he's on the bed. He said all of a sudden he couldn't move, and that there was this kind of a purple light in the room. And what I knew from my own experiences of being picked up is that what happens in those moments is they arrange your molecules to be absolutely transparent, and so they can make you go through materials without conflicting with the physical materials. And so but the thing that was so unusual about this pickup was that they left an imprint of his entire body on the ceiling, which I put a picture of in the book. And then, and they also had, when they picked him up, his outline was burned into the sheets. So
like the Shroud of Turin.
Yeah, like I was just thinking the same things.
That's right.
I never thought of that.
It's an electromagnetic, supposedly.
Electromagnetic imprint on,
Right,
on
exactly.
the material.
So, but we get samples. Linda Moulton Howe gave us samples and said, what do you make of this? So what Levengood concluded was that he called them people. He said, these people know how to use energy and tools, energy tools that we haven't even dreamed of, because the outline was like one thread wide. There was no slop. There was no, it was amazing.
High resolution.
Yeah, and it changed the physical characteristics of the cotton and polyester sheet. So all the polyester became this clear, stiff, kind of a hardened liquid-like stuff that had kind of solidified.
So it changed the molecular structure of the material, you're saying?
That's right. That's right. If you know how to use plasma, you can direct frequencies in such a way that
to manipulate frequencies.
You not only, frequencies, and then you also change the relationship of the electrons.
Wow.
That, that are in that material. And so all the characteristics change. And so we got a chance to look at those materials, and with it came a message that he had, that this guy's name was Urander Oliveira. And he said, I have a message for the white-haired scientist. That's Dr. Levengood. And that message is, we did this way so that you will begin to understand how to use energy. And so we ended up realizing that they have these astounding tools, and when you have two opposing or two frequencies that don't work well together, in plasma as well as in music, what you get is a third frequency, or a third, I guess I'll call it frequency or field, that gets created. So you've got these two, and they don't really blend very well, but together they say, let's create a third that's called a binaural beat or binaural frequency, or you can get a trinaural, or
aren't those overtones you're talking about?
And
yes, and the overtone does the work.
Right.
So it's we have a lot to learn yet. I mean, I've learned a lot from Levengood. I understood a lot because of my own experiences with Kundalini, but I think we're on the threshold of a whole. I think the planet is saying, "Yoo-hoo, wake up!" We want to go to the next stage of existence, which is not quite so heavy, and you do it using energy.
Okay,
so who were these? Sorry, I'm going to go quickly. Who were these people that he was contacting? Do you have a name? Do you have a place, or where were they? South America, you said?
South America, and it's in the book. It was the Oliveira family, and you can go online. I think those are still up, and you can type in Urander,
Oliveira family,
Urandir, Oliveira, and you can watch him do some astounding things with energy, because he has been exposed to energies that have reorganized him and his capacities. And I think that's the message to us as humans. We have this capacity to unfold, kind of like a flower you know, from a seed.
Blossoming.
Start with this little seed, and then it unfolds into this magnificent structure. And we have that capacity, and we're kind of not unfolding right now. We're sort of.
Right.
Did you hear about the discovery? Sorry, did you hear about the discoveries in Antarctica about the room they found?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
That
all right.
it was healing rooms on frequency. They were basically frequency rooms.
Well, that's what some of the pyramids were, like in Bosnia and stuff, right? They were used for healing, the resonant frequencies.
I see the pyramids as vastly different.
Well, I'm not saying that that's what the big pyramids were for. I thought there were some pyramids, not all of them. I'm not saying all of them were used that way. I had heard that there were some pyramids, like if you use pyramids, like the structure pyramid,
yes,
there's something about the geometry of that pyramid.
It'll have a frequency, yeah,
that creates some sort of resonance that produces healing. All right, let me just screen share. God, we have so much to talk about. Patty, this is the slideshow that I put together with the slides that you sent me. Well, folks, we are going to have to hold it here for part 1, and we will have part 2 as a separate recording, because we have been having such an incredible time talking to our guests about this incredible topic. We're going to have them come back and do more interviews on this subject, but we will stop our part 1 here. Stay tuned for part 2, folks, because it gets even better and more interesting and fascinating. And we will have that following this part 1. We'll have that link also in the description section for you to find. So stay tuned. Thank you.